the Being Yourself is the Strategy podcast, a show about building your business by being more of who you already are. I'm talking with values-driven entrepreneurs to find out who they are, what drives them, and how they're making an impact. Because when good people make money, we make the world a better place. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Emily Lauren Dick. This is the Being Yourself is the Strategy podcast. Every episode, I'm going to be interviewing a new entrepreneur to find out about their journey. I'm going to be asking them the exact same questions that I ask every single entrepreneur that comes on this show. Since this is the first episode, I'm going to kick this off by asking myself the very same interview questions. So let's dive in. We often define ourselves only by what we do as business owners. So I'm asking everyone, including myself, about who they are aside from a business owner. I am passionate about helping people, especially women and gender diverse folks. I absolutely love human design. I'm a 5/1 manifester. I love myself a little woo, even though I'm very much the type of person who lives in their logical mind most of the time. I am a mother. I am a wife, a daughter. I'm a late diagnosed AuDHDer, and I am a recovering people pleaser and perfectionist. I am stereotypically Canadian because I love hockey, I coach it, I play it, and I could eat pizza almost every single day of my life. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about my business. I am the founder of a company called Unbuttoned Brands. It's a bold brand design studio where we focus on being yourself is the strategy. So strategy first, branding. I help brands look as good as the impact that they're making. The people that I work with are very values driven. They're usually service providers. And I absolutely love working with people who aren't afraid of color. So my business is fairly new, but my experience in creative marketing isn't. Unbuttoned Brands actually went through a bit of a renaming. It was previously called Bootstrapped Woman. And a little less than a year ago, I decided that I wanted to change the name to be a little bit more inclusive and reflective of the values that are so important to me in my business. So I took out the word woman and I changed the business name to Unbuttoned Brands. So what's my full story about how I got started in entrepreneurship? Well, it really started from when I was in university studying sociology and women's studies. I had this big epiphany that the information I was learning about body image specifically, how capitalism and the patriarchy has really essentially manufactured insecurities in women. And then they are also providing the solution through diet companies and makeup and all of the things. And I really wanted to make that information accessible to young girls and young women, because it really changed my perspective on my own body and my own body image issues. So once I was finished university, I set out on a path to write a book, and I interviewed over 100 women. I really wanted a photographic component to go with this book. So I actually ended up teaching myself photography because I couldn't afford to hire a photographer to do the type of work that I wanted. And really my own creative vision needed to come through. So I learned how to be a photographer. I ended up getting so good at it that I actually opened my own photography studio. And I was able to dip my toes into the creative process, and it really catapulted me into where I am now. It took several years to really work on this project. I had a full-time job at the time, never gave up on the idea that I wanted to get this book published and into the hands of young women and young girls who really needed it. So for many years, I was querying different publishers, different literary agents, and I actually got a lot of really great feedback, which can be very rare. I also got a lot of no's and a lot of no responses, which is typical for the industry. But I got one email from a literary agent who basically told me that if I was going to get this book published, I needed to build an online platform. An online platform is basically what we know as personal branding today. And that really started my journey into branding And it started, of course, with myself. I got super scrappy and found ways to get publicity, to do all the creative, to really make a standout brand presence. And I think that played a huge role in why I ended up getting a traditional publishing deal for my book. As a nobody, I wasn't a celebrity, wasn't a doctor, didn't have the kind of credentials that they're looking for. But I did have an online presence, and that was so important. So fast forward a little bit, I tried a lot of different creative projects along the way, tried to figure out what was next after I had published my first book. There's obviously not a whole lot of money in publishing books unless, you're a big celebrity name. But I was okay with that because my reason for getting the book into hands of other people was more important than making money, of course. But there comes a time where working a full-time job and figuring out how to still be creative became really loud for me. And eventually I dabbled in copywriting, lots of different freelance creative marketing work. And eventually there came a time where I decided to go all in on my creative marketing services. When I started Bootstrapped Woman, it was more about social media, graphics, websites, things like that. And then I really, really narrowed down my focus into branding just in the last couple of years. Overall, I have around 13 years of experience working for brands, working for businesses in creative marketing, and I absolutely love it. So what is my why? As an AuDHDer who was very late diagnosed, I always felt a little bit different, a little bit of a misfit, like I didn't fit in anywhere. And what branding really has taught me is that your people are out there and you just have to find them through being yourself. I've always wanted to help other people, and being able to combine my creative skills with my passion for helping others stand out in their industry, but also call in people that they'll really enjoy working with and that really understand them and that align with them in their values. I don't want to work with people who aren't inclusive, and my branding makes it very clear. It repels people that don't feel that same way. So what's been the scariest part of working for myself, and how have I navigated those fears? I think the scariest part of working for myself is as soon as I get comfortable, I realize that it's time to get outside of my comfort zone. And that's always very super uncomfortable. Entrepreneurship is all about facing those fears, those insecurities, which played such a big role in my own personal development. But that is the human experience. We're always in flux. We're constantly changing and growing as people. And entrepreneurship has given me a really great way of exploring how far I can stretch myself, but also when it's not okay to do so. You have to kind of push yourself past your limits sometimes to learn where you're actually comfortable. We have this amazing gift of the human experience where we get to do stuff that scares us and grow from it and then do it all over again. So many people tie their worth to their revenue. Is my business financially sustainable, or am I still in that growth season? Well, I'll be honest, my business is still not financially sustainable in the way that I want it to be. I'm still in a growth season. And a lot of that has to do with my personal situation where I am the primary or default caregiver for my two children. And my husband is the primary financial provider in our household. This year is really the first year that I think my rates are reflective of my experience. I know there's a lot of people out there less experienced than me that are doing better financially. And that can definitely be a little triggering or make me feel a little bit insecure about my journey. But I'm also really proud of how I got here and what I'm doing for my family. That allows me to be very flexible and kind of daring and courageous when I'm making changes in my business. So how much money would feel like enough to me? Well, really, as long as my family is taken care of, as long as we have room to do some fun and creative and exciting things in our life, and we can put money back into our community and the causes we care about, that's the number that works for me. I don't have a specific number in mind, but I need to be conscious about actually charging for my services because for years, I was undervaluing myself. I've got a great portfolio now. I don't need to give away my time, my expertise. A well-resourced entrepreneur is someone who can do a lot of good for their community. So aside from the financial side of things, what does success look like for me? Well, for me, it's being available whenever my kids need me. I have an AuDHDer son who has really severe anxiety, and being available to help him through these tough moments is really important to me. Success also looks like working with people who are making a difference in this world, whether it's making someone feel beautiful as a hairstylist or helping people heal through therapy. We all have really important work to do. We all have a role to play in our society. And my role, luckily, is to help entrepreneurs be seen for their work, for their talent, for their services. A lot of entrepreneurs suffer from imposter syndrome at some point in their career. That's this feeling that makes you doubt your own skills and accomplishments and worthiness. So how have I navigated imposter syndrome? Well, I think first of all, imposter syndrome exists to keep women small and powerless. Imposter syndrome exists to make us doubt ourselves, to keep funding industries that are constantly asking us to improve ourselves. And I think imposter syndrome is just a big joke. That being said, I absolutely have experienced imposter syndrome. I still experience imposter syndrome. I am a 2 times published author. And I have a business and all these things. And yet I still compare myself to others. I still feel like I'm not at where I should be. And I think imposter syndrome really is about all these shoulds. We need to stop with the shoulding. And that's why it's so important for me to do the work I'm doing, helping values-driven people get seen and paid for the work that they're doing. Imposter syndrome has a way of trying to discourage people, women, gender diverse folks from pursuing work that they own, essentially. They're not working for the man. They are working for themselves. They're creating their own business, their own rules. And that is scary to capitalism and the patriarchy. So it's so important that imposter syndrome doesn't become so overwhelming that it stops you from accomplishing or going after what you really want to do in this world. So have I ever felt like I had to be someone else in my business? I think absolutely. As a neurodivergent person, I have tried on many different identities to try and fit in. I've also tried a lot of different strategies and advice that didn't work for my energy levels. I tried to be the type of person who posted on social media all the time, that was super on, and it felt very performative to me. Whereas content that until eventually I decided to scrap that altogether and focus on the mediums that actually make me feel more creative and more energized. The other thing for me too is my energy ebbs and flows. There are days where I can hyper focus. I am on for hours and hours and hours. And then there's days where I absolutely can barely function. That especially happens when I've been doing a lot of things that are more extroverted. One of the things that I used to feel like I had to do all the time was these networking or coffee chats. And it's actually the reason that I started this podcast in the first place, because I hate small talk. I hate unclear expectations. So with a podcast, I can ask you those deep and dirty questions, and we know exactly what we're here for. We're trying to empower other people by listening to real human stories, because that's what we are. Behind every brand is a real human who has real experiences. It's time we said goodbye to the girl boss and bro vibes that we're seeing out there, where everyone is trying to perform and pretend like they have everything together. Well, frankly, most humans are messy, and we need to see both sides of things. And you can still present yourself as a professional person, even when you're sharing your human experiences. When you don't hide those parts of who you are, you actually call in and attract the people that are going to get you. So how do I show up as my true self in business? Well, I definitely don't hide the fact that I'm neurodivergent. In fact, it's prominently displayed on my About page. I want people to be comfortable being themselves around me. I also very much operate my business with my values at the forefront. You'll see on my webpage footer that I have an inclusivity statement. If you don't vibe with those values, then that statement helps repel you from my website because I don't want to work with people who don't believe in those values. I also include a sustainability note on my signature where basically I say that I'm responding at a time that works for me, and I hope that you respond at a time that works for you. And not to rush. I don't want people to feel like they always have to rush, that they always have to hustle to get things done. We can do business differently. We can do it more sustainably. And that's a really important value of mine. I'm very anti-hustle. We need to do business in a way that is good for our health, for our nervous systems. And I share those values with others because I want to inspire them and because I don't want to work with people that don't feel that way. So let's talk about some of the mistakes that I've made on my business journey because mistakes are part of the process. And you know what? In fact, let's not even call them mistakes because I think every mistake we make is a redirection, right? It's information. It tells us about what we enjoy doing and what we don't enjoy doing. So one of the biggest things for me was my rebrand or my renaming when I was originally called Bootstrap Woman and then changed my business name to Unbuttoned Brands. I basically undid all of the work I had done to build backlinks, search engine optimization, all of that when I did a rebrand. So right now, my domain has like baby SEO authority. And even though maybe that technically would be seen as a mistake, to me, it was such an important part of really leaning into my values and showing my clients that my values are more important than getting clients, I guess. Other mistakes I've made include listening to different people's strategies on how to market their business. I mean, it takes years to actually undo a lot of the things that you've learned as an entrepreneur in order to figure out what actually works for you. And the truth is, those things are always going to be changing because we're always changing as people. So mistakes aren't really mistakes. I think they're redirections that point us in the direction on the next path, on the next step that we're supposed to take for our entrepreneurial journey. So have I ever followed advice from someone that didn't work for me? 100%. I think part of learning to trust my own intuition was learning when I wasn't actually listening to it. Trusting yourself, your inner knowing is a lot easier said than done. I think having people to talk things out with is super important. And that's probably why I've been led to hire different coaches over the years. And some of the work I've done with them has been really helpful. And it's actually helped me listen to my own intuition. But I did once work with a coach who was really great at the beginning and actually helped me make some really impactful decisions for my business. But then it became very clear that they were promoting the strategies that worked for them and not me. And I would push back and I would explain to them that, this doesn't work for my energy type. And they were asking me to push past my comfort zone, but not the comfort zone where we're uncomfortable and growing. They were asking me to push past my boundaries. I was not about to start DMing people every day, doing 8 networking calls. That would literally burn me out. I would be done and unable to function. And even though those were the things that really empowered them, they weren't listening to me. The greatest thing about this experience was it really taught me that I need to trust myself. I knew what they were telling me wasn't going to work for myself. And it was the first time I think I legitimately took my own advice over someone else's in that type of situation. So how have I learned to trust myself in running my business? I think honestly, just time and experience. Learning things the hard way sometimes is the way that you learn to figure out what really works for you and how to trust in your inner knowing. The thing about entrepreneurialism is you are going to have to experiment. You're going to have to try things, and you're going to have to realize that sometimes your time, energy, and money is not well spent in a certain area. But that allows you to make better and more clear judgment calls for the future. There are always going to be outside opinions, negative thoughts about how you're running things. And I think it's super important to realize that you have to prioritize yourself in those moments. No client is worth going against your boundaries, going against your mental wellness, your well-being. As someone who's very sensitive in business, it can be really challenging not to take any criticism or feedback personally. And so I've learned that I have to think about it in the way that everyone else is on their own journey and they need to figure things out in their own way and own process. So really, I can only control what I control, and that's the most important thing. So what are some of my non-negotiables, or what I like to call hills to die on for my business? I obviously think it's super important to have values as a business owner. It has been important for me to operate from that perspective, but I also think it's important for other brands and businesses to lead from that same direction. Traditional power structures and systems are not working for this world. And so we have to create our own. And that starts with being a values-led business. I mentioned this before. I don't think that we need to hustle to be successful. I think that we can create better flow in business if we are in tune with our energy levels, our ebbs and flows, and we prioritize our wellness. I really do not believe in manipulative marketing. I think it's gross and icky, and I don't know if it's my neurospiciness, but I can spot it a mile away. Triggering people, shaming them, making them feel guilty is just not the way to get clients. The other thing is that pivots are literally my specialty. I think that it's super okay for people to grow and change and try new things. That's been my exact journey. I used to think that maybe it came across as like flaky because I would switch things up, but really it was just about the process of learning who I am, what I like doing. And it's put me on this beautiful path that I'm on now, getting to help such amazing businesses build brands that really mean something. Your business can change, but if you have a great foundation in place, your brand will grow with it. So earlier we were talking about getting outside our comfort zones and how it can be a good thing. Again, as long as you're not crossing boundaries, I think it's so good to get yourself outside your comfort zone. I feel like I'm constantly doing that in my business. Right now, I'm doing it. Here I am recording a podcast without any scripting, which is a big change for me as a neurodivergent. I love scripting things, but also it can come across as very performative. In some cases, I think it's a great way to get your point across. But right now, I've been challenging myself to just have a slight breakdown of what I want to talk about. And I'm just speaking off the top of my head from my heart. Does everything come out the exact way that I want it to? No, of course not. There are things that I feel like I'm missing or forgetting to say. But I'm liking this challenge of being more conversation, more off the cuff. And I think it helps people get to know me a little bit better and get to know what I'm like actually in real life when you're working with me, when I'm not reading off of a script. When you're getting outside your comfort zone, I think it's really important to have the right support team in place to help you be the best version of yourself. Whether that's having an employee or having a therapist, I think it's so important that you build a team, a network of people who can help you in your entrepreneurial journey. So for me, I feel like I have a very big support team, and that's something I've learned that I needed to have in able to do this work. I have a therapist. I have a team of spiritual guides and healers that I use. Typically, when I'm feeling out of touch with my own intuition, it's a great way for me to get back on a path of listening to my inner knowing. I think it's super important to take care of your body. So I've got an osteopath, a massage therapist. I love a little pampering. I love to go for facials, and I have friends that are entrepreneurs that really understand what I'm going through. And I'm actually, for the first time, putting together a mastermind of very diverse professionals where we're going to help each other with some peer-to-peer support. All of those people help me be my best self in this business. And I think it's really, really important that we all have a team of people who can help us. Not only do I get to support some amazing people, their businesses, their brands, but they also help me be my best self so I can help more people in the work that I do. So what are some of the ways that I have my business work for me? What are the systems? What are the strategies that I use? For me, I save like meetings, appointments to days where I'm a little bit more extroverted. So if I'm out doing my Pilates classes, right after, that's when I'm booking in-person meetings. And that's so I have some time in my schedule where I have to answer to no one. I can be creative. I can do blog writing. I can record a podcast episode. I can record a video for YouTube, whatever it, kind of stacking appointments and like extroverted things together and then having white space to figure out what I want to work on really works for me and my brain. The autistic side of me loves a schedule. The ADHD side of me loves to change things up. So I have to kind of build a schedule that works for both sides of me. I also have a virtual assistant, which I actually forgot to mention in my support system, who helps me with Pinterest, which is a marketing strategy that I've been testing out for a few months. A lot of the marketing strategies I've started to use in my business are very slow moving. They take a lot of time to create success, which can feel super frustrating, but I am creating the infrastructure to support my business the way that I need to function. I am not the type of person who's going to show up on social media every single day. That I've done, and it has burned me out. So I need more low level, low energy type of strategies for marketing my business. So a big focus for me is obviously Pinterest, search engine optimization, and long form kind of evergreen content that will work for my business. I like to say that your business is an act of resistance because you get to control your labor, time, your money. So in what ways is my business an act of resistance? Well, I think the very fact that it exists is, of course, why. I help other people get seen. I help service providers who are not in that traditional capitalistic corporate structure get seen. And once you are seen, once your brand is noticed, that know, like, trust factor is at work, and it helps people get paid for the very work that they're doing. So service providers get seen and paid because they have a brand that is clear, it stands out, it makes a difference. Every single business I work with is challenging those structures. And that's why my business feels very much an act of resistance against the traditional structures and power that has not worked out well for our society. What is next for me in this business, other than, of course, this podcast? Well, I've just introduced a new offer, which is a one-on-one brand intensive program. So it's really for people who are not necessarily ready to invest in a full rebrand. I get that it can be a big investment, but I want to make myself accessible and I want to help more people. So I created the Brand Intensive, which is basically a review of all of your online presence. So your social media, if you're on there, your website, all of your assets. I go over it and I give you some recommendations about what you can do to stand out more. You get a recorded video of my findings, a checklist, and then a one-on-one call with me to discuss everything, ask any questions you've got. And then on top of that, I have created a lifetime membership to a Telegram community where you can actually get my feedback as you're fixing your branding in real time. It combines all of the things that I really love about the work I do. And I think it makes it a little bit more accessible for people who need my help. All right, it's time for the final question. When all is said and done, what do I want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered as someone who inspires other people to be themselves and to be the best version of themselves. I want to be remembered for making people feel good about who they are. All right, that is the first episode wrapped up. And I can't wait to interview more entrepreneurs for this series. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. So get out there and be yourself. See you next time.